Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the third meeting of the Interagency and Expert Group on the Sustainable Development Goal Indicators at the Mexican Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Allow me to introduce the distinguished panelists that will deliver the opening remarks of the meeting. Claudia Ruiz Macié Salinas, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Mexico. Julio Santaella, President of the National Institute of Statistics and Geography, INEGI. Lenny Montiel, Assistant Secretary General for Economic Development of the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs. Alicia Bárcena, Executive Secretary of the Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean. The first remarks will be delivered by Claudia Ruiz Macié Salinas, Minister of Foreign Affairs. Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Julio Santaella, President of the National Institute of Statistics and Geography, INEGI. Ms. Alicia Bárcena Ibarra, Executive Secretary of the Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean. Mr. Lenny Montiel, Assistant Secretary General for Economic Development, United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs. Ladies and gentlemen, I am deeply honored to welcome you all to Mexico and to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs for the third meeting of the Interagency and Expert Group of the Sustainable Development Goal Indicators. The work you will develop here will be of the utmost importance for the future of the global community of nations. It is said that in the mid-18th century, the great British mathematician Jedediah Buxton was invited to see David Garrick perform in Shakespeare's Richard III at the Drury Lane Theatre in London. When asked whether he had enjoyed the play, his reply was, well, it contained 12,445 words. Perhaps Mr. Buxton took things a little bit too far, but the message is clear. If you cannot measure something, you cannot either control, evaluate, change, or improve it. Experience has demonstrated that the lack of common indicators affects how we measure the progress of our countries. We cannot have sound policies without well-defined indicators. Today we have good reasons to be optimistic. 2015 was a crucial year for multilateralism. Despite global economic instability, as well as political tensions caused, among other things, by new threats to global security, the international community adopted fundamental agreements. First of all, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, which is the most comprehensive and ambitious collective endeavor ever taken, not only to draw a vision, but to signal a concrete plan of action to create a more egalitarian, more just, better world for the present day and the one we will inherit to the generations to come. This has been no easy path. From the United Nations Human and Environmental Conference of 1972 to the Millennium Development Goals of the year 2000, including the United Nations Conference on Environment and Development held in Rio, this effort has required that the international community make a huge effort to build consensuses and to fight inertias, both at the national and the global levels. Then, the Addis Ababa Action Agenda, which aims to mobilize financial resources in order to promote development, including the implementation of the 2030 Agenda itself. Last but not least, the Paris Agreement on Climate Change, a colossal and historic agreement which will allow us to build more resilient societies and to maintain the planet's temperature below the 2 degrees Celsius. But if 2015 will be remembered as the year when the major international agreements were reached, 2016 has to be the year of their implementation. Now it is time to turn words into deeds. But as we said, we cannot be effective without a mechanism of measurement to assess our progress. That is why this gathering is of the greatest importance, as it will allow this group of renowned experts to enrich and fine-tune the global indicators to implement the Sustainable Development Goals of the 2030 Agenda, by defining their classification, the definition of baselines, advancing on its disaggregation, and developing methodologies for data collection tools. The objective of this meeting is to ensure that all countries can measure their progress regarding fulfilling the commitments adopted last September at the United Nations. The experts gathered here today will contribute to the creation of robust follow-up and review mechanisms with a solid framework of indicators and statistical data to monitor progress and ensure accountability. We count on you as our guides to give us a compass that will allow us to navigate for the next 15 years in implementing the Sustainable Development Goals. Ladies and gentlemen, the Mexican government is fully committed with this agenda, and we're currently defining a roadmap to make the necessary institutional arrangements, as well as to define the required actions and projects that need to be undertaken to implement this new development framework. Specifically, Mexico's main contributions to these global efforts were a multidimensional approach to poverty, the recognition of the contribution of migrants to development, regardless of their immigration status, and gender equality and the empowerment of girls and women. On behalf of the Government of Mexico, I would like to express our recognition for the excellent work done by the group of experts on the integration of the global indicators. For Mexico, it is an honor and a great responsibility to co-chair through INEGI the group that now meets in Mexico City. I would like to express our appreciation to the Philippine Statistics Authority in co-chairing the Interagency and Expert Group on Sustainable Development Goal Indicators. The United Nations Statistics Division also deserves a special mention for the work carried out. I am convinced that this gathering reaffirms the commitment of the administration of President Enrique Peña Nieto with the implementation of the international agreements adopted in 2015. I wish you all to have a fruitful work sessions while also enjoying your stay in Mexico City. Thank you very much.
We appreciate the words of our Madam Secretary, Claudia Ruiz Maciez Salinas. Now, we will listen for the remarks of Julio Santaella.
Dear colleagues, I would like to welcome all of you to Mexico. It's an honor to host the third meeting of the Interagency and Expert Group on SDG Indicators, the first meeting after the 47th session of the UN Statistical Commission. I want to greet and welcome Mr. Lenny Montiel, Assistant Secretary General for the UN Economic Development at the Department of Economic and Social Affairs, Ms. Alicia Bárcena, Executive Secretary of the Economic Commission of Latin America and the Caribbean. I want to thank Chancellor Claudia Ruiz Maciez, Secretary of Foreign Affairs, for hosting this meeting and for the commitment of the Mexican government with the 2030 agenda. I also want to welcome and thank the co-chairs of the IAEG-SDG, Ms. Lisa Bersales, National Statistician and Civil Registrar General of the Philippine Statistical Authority, and Enrique Ordaz, Director General of Integration, Analysis, and Research at INEGI. Welcome all members of the IAEG, observer countries, representatives from the international agencies and other organizations, and from civil society, the business community, and academia. As all of you know, during the deliberations of the 47th sessions 3 weeks ago, the World Statistical Community, working under the umbrella of the UN Statistical Commission, agreed on the global indicator framework for the SDGs. I take this opportunity to congratulate the IAEG-SDG and the Secretariat for this achievement in moving forward the 2030 agenda. The Commission, and I quote, expressed its appreciation to the interagency group and asked it to continue to work with the same level of focus, determination, and ambition, end of quote. However, once this milestone has been accomplished, important challenges remain for this interagency expert group to solve. There is a need to clearly define how the more than 200 indicators should be classified according to the proposed tier system. This definition will set up the path for the group's future work, particularly regarding the methodology for the most challenging indicators. Another important issue refers to the definition of the baseline of the indicators. Equally important is the development of the global reporting mechanisms, particularly the data flows from countries to international organizations. Not less relevant are the strategies to move forward on data disaggregation to preserve the principle of leaving no one behind. Dear colleagues, I want to express my gratitude to the UN Statistics Division and all the UN agencies for providing technical advice and expertise to the work of the IAEG. Also, to the representatives of civil society, the business community, and academia for their invaluable inputs. From the interventions of member states at the recent session of the Commission, I gathered there was a general agreement that the work of this interagency expert group should be conducted under strictly technical criteria, and I believe this principle must prevail during the discussion during the next 3 days. Before I finish, let me remind you of the key role of national statistical offices in the follow-up of the 2030 Agenda. NSOs must strengthen the role as leaders of the national statistical systems. In the end, they will be the ones that would define the level of disaggregation that is appropriate to the national context. They should also be capable of incorporating the geospatial dimension to the global, regional, and national indicator frameworks. NSOs face the challenge of becoming more innovative in developing new methodologies and looking for partnerships with other organizations in order to exploit new data sources and to complement official statistics where appropriate. Most importantly, NSOs should remain fully engaged in and maintain a dialogue with their political counterparts to be able to understand their needs and how best to provide the data and indicators to support decision-making and to evaluate the impact of public policies. These challenges are not minor, and this group of experts is fully aware of it. I wish you a very productive meeting and enjoy your stay in Mexico City. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Santaella. The floor is now open for Lenny Montiel.
Buenos días, excelentísima señora Claudia Ruiz Maceo, canciller de México, estimado Julio Santaella, presidente del Instituto Nacional de Estadísticas y Geografía de México, estimadísima señora Alicia Bárcena, secretaria ejecutiva de la Comisión Económica para América Latina y el Caribe de las Naciones Unidas, distinguidos miembros del Grupo Interagencial de Expertos, colegas, damas y caballeros. It is a great pleasure to be here. Let me thank the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Mexico and the National Institute of Statistics and Geography of Mexico for co-hosting this meeting. I would like in particular to express my appreciation, the appreciation of the Department for Economic and Social Affairs of the United Nations, to the organizers, Mr. Enrique Ordaz, co-chair of the Interagency Group for SDGs, and the colleagues from INEGI and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs for their dedication and support. Over the past 12 months, we all have followed with great interest the work of the Interagency Group for the SDGs as they progress towards finalizing an initial set of global indicators to monitor the goals and targets of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Much like the process of developing the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, much like the process to develop this initial set of indicators was inclusive and transparent at unprecedented levels, and involve, through many consultations, a large number of stakeholders. Statistical data and indicators are essential for the follow-up and review processes, and central to the implementation of this new agenda. The high-level political forum of the United Nations next July and for the next 15 years will rely on the global indicators this group has defined in order to review progress towards all goals and targets at the global level. The agreement at the Statistical Commission at its 47th session sees the global indicator framework as a practical starting point for the goals and targets of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. The indicators should rightly be viewed as a major success for this group, specifically, and for the entire international statistical community more generally. This would not have been possible without the dedication of the representative of national statistical systems in the group and the continuous engagement and hard work of the observers, the international agencies, and other stakeholders who have provided countless inputs for the framework to be constructed. At this time, again, it is important to recognize the individual efforts of the 28 members of the interagency group for the SDGs, who are formally representative of the 193 member states of the United Nations. Special recognition, of course, to the two co-chairs of the group, Mr. Ordaz and Ms. Bersales. Your work is showing the leading role of member states in this process. This agreement, however, does not signal an end to the work of the interagency group on SDGs, but rather the starting point to ensure that all goals and targets are appropriately reviewed and that the necessary indicators are fully implemented so that no individual or group is left behind. The work and discussion that will take place over the next 3 days at this meeting will be central to defining the right approach and work plan for the implementation of the global indicators as a key element for the success of this agenda. It will not be possible to ensure that all goals and targets are met for all people and groups without having sound methodologies and metadata that provide the necessary technical underpinning of these indicators. This is why the creation of a tier system for the indicators and a work plan for methodological development of tier 3 indicators are of such importance. At this meeting, the interagency group will also consider other important aspects of the global indicator framework that will be of immense importance for the agenda. Establishing a mechanism for the revision of global SDG indicators is important and should, as the Statistical Commission stated, make use of expertise in other related expert processes. This group will play a key role in linking all these different processes, of which many of the members are already part. Finally, let me say a word about data disaggregation, as this is one of the fundamental aspects of the global indicator framework and key to ensuring that no person or group is left behind. I am pleased to see that the Statistical Commission agreed with this and decided to establish a working group on data disaggregation that would be a subgroup of the interagency group of experts. At this meeting, the interagency group of experts will finalize the terms of reference for this subgroup, and I look forward to hearing about the group's ideas and recommendations on how to strengthen capacities, standards, and tools in this area. Building up on the work already completed by the interagency expert group, this meeting is an important step in ensuring that the global indicator framework can successfully monitor the full scope of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. I look forward to the outcome of your deliberations, and I wish you all a fruitful discussion, allowing to accelerate the commitments that the heads of state and government of 193 members of the United Nations endorsed last year. Thank you very much.
We appreciate the remarks of Mr. Montiel. It is Ms. Alicia Bárcena's turn to address the room.
Oh my goodness. Good morning. Dear Claudia Ruiz-Massieu, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Mexico, Julio Santaella, President of INEGI, my dear Lenny Montiel, colleague for many years of UNDESA, authorities of national statistic systems and institutes of the member countries of the Interagency and Expert Group on Sustainable Development Goals Indicators. Isn't that long? Why don't you try to see if we can find a shorter name? I think that would be first task. Anyway, dear authorities, dear friends, I would like to thank the government of Mexico, and in particular Claudia Ruiz-Massieu, Minister of Foreign Affairs, for the warm welcome extended as host of this conference, and congratulate them because they are assuming the co-chairmanship of the Interagency and Expert Group on the Sustainable Development Goal Indicators, IAEG, together with the Philippines. That's great news. And I want to extend special congratulations to Julio Santaella, together with Felix Vélez and Enrique Ordaz, who are here. And I can't see them because it's too, okay? Because they have shown immense commitment and support to this process. I also want to avail myself of the opportunity to commend you, all of you in this room, the international statistic community, because you are the ones who made possible a very successful conclusion of the 47th session of the United Nations Statistical Commission. After 9 months of work, I was one that thought it was going to be impossible, and you made it possible. You remember, Lenny? I said to Mr. Wu, I said, this is not going to be possible in March, and you made it possible. And I really think the world owes you a lot on this. You have arrived to a list of 231 indicators, which are the part of the indicator framework, and it's going to be the baseline for defining the metrics and will help us to monitor progress and will help us, everybody in the world, will be looking at the work you're doing, because we all are very committed to Agenda 2030, but we need how to measure it, how to measure progress. And I think the other very specific feature I found is that the participation of the UN system, plus the civil society, plus the academic stakeholders, guarantee throughout the process, is guaranteeing legitimacy of a very highly participatory and transparent process where all the voices are being considered. I also believe this is a very great step through. So it's now essential to put in place, as Santaella said, as Julio said. Now, what are we going to do? Houston, we have a problem because we have 231 indicators that, of course, we have Tier 1, which is more or less what you guys know how to do, Tier 2, which already has a lot of challenges, and Tier 3 that we have to invent for the world, including the disaggregation of data. So, that is something where we, the regional commissions in the United Nations, will want to accompany the process because all the regional commissions have a statistic commission we accompany, like the Statistics Commission of the Americas, or Africa, or Asia, or Europe, or the ESQA, who has also a statistic commission. So we want you to see us as your partners. Because, Agenda 2030 is universal, is bold, is ambitious. And the other thing, you have a great responsibility because the member states, for the first time, differently from the MDGs, feel ownership of this agenda. So you guys are going to be totally accountable to the governments who are going to start asking you, how are we doing, where are we going, what do we have to do, because this is a member state agenda. And also, it's a very complicated agenda that has to integrate the different dimensions of sustainable development, economic, environmental, and social. And integration in development terms means pursuing the 3 dimensions and the 17 goals simultaneously. That's a big challenge, without allowing the pursuit of one goal to come at the expense of another. That's a problem. And full integration has to be achieved by a dynamic, comprehensive development framework that has to capture not only the indicator itself, but the interrelationships between the different sectors of the economy and the causal relationship between policies and goals and the impact of the regional and global environmental and economic variables in each country. So this is a framework that will optimize policy, we believe. To address cross-cutting issues will be definitely a challenge. For example, how to mainstream gender all through the 17 goals. Not only goal 5, sorry. I mean, women now are half of the population of the world, so we have to be in all the goals. And the other question is that inequality, from my perspective, from our perspective, will require, and achieving these 17 goals, and with equality or inequality at the center of the agenda, will require a change in the style of development. So that is also in your hands. We don't want you to measure development as we have it today. No, we want to change the style of development. This is a new development paradigm all through. So an inequality will need to be measured in a different way. It's not only poverty what we want to measure. We want to meet really income disparities. We want to measure income, education disparities, gender disparities. We want to measure disparities. And how do we close the gaps? So it's multi-dimensional. It's not going to be easy. So these SDG indicators will require an unprecedented amount of data to be produced and analyzed, taking into account different national and regional realities. Now, you are to blame, sorry to say. You were so good in measuring the MDGs. Now, from the beginning of Agenda 2030, the member states turned to you. That's what happened. And I think it's very good news. Because what happened is now all the member states from the beginning wanted in the negotiations of 2030 that the importance of indicators be the powerful instrument for its implementation. They didn't come after. And I think this is very relevant. With the MDGs, the indicators came after. You came afterwards. Now you're coming together with the member states in the negotiation process. So I am here, of course, to advocate the regional dimension, which I believe very much on. And I would say that our starting point should be, if you agree with me, that the pattern of development, including the methods to measure progress, is business as usual, is no longer an option. And we have to be prepared to align with this paradigm shift. And therefore, I believe that we, at least from the regional perspectives, we are proposing 4 steps to advance in implementation. Number 1, integrate sustainable development goals, targets, and indicators into the national development planning and fiscal frameworks, including, the national budgets and public investment. I mean, you guys, how are you going to do your work if there's no more budget for the national systems of statistics? I mean, are you going to do it within existing resources? I don't think so. So, number 1, how do we integrate this? Number 2, how do we strengthen statistic capabilities for data collection, disaggregation, in the context of a data revolution, both at regional and global levels? For example, in the Conference of Statistics of the Americas, there has been great definitions and groups have been formed to support this process. Number 3, how do we support the design and follow-up of means of implementation in a very difficult economic context? I mean, the economy is not growing. Nobody wants to put more money. So we have to be very clear on the messages we're giving and identify innovative sources of financing for development, both regionally and globally. We believe that fiscal can be one of those. That is tax evasion, for example, in Latin America is around $320 billion. Tax evasion, an illusion. Africa is more or less on the same. So how do we use this money for development purposes? And 4, how do we leverage science, technology, and innovation? For example, we in Latin America, we are suggesting the creation of a fund to buy patents relevant to the poorest sectors of society. We have to buy patents. We cannot wait for the developed countries to transfer the technology in concessional terms. We have been waiting for that 25 years. I think we have to buy them. And finally, we have to enhance the regional architecture to perform better coordination among intergovernmental bodies and non-United Nations organizations. And we are suggesting the creation of a regional forum for sustainable development, where the work that you're doing in Latin America, in Africa, in Asia, in Europe, goes to a regional forum where the other sectors listen to what you have done. You cannot, it's very difficult to go directly to the global without discussing intersectorally region by region. So, to conclude, I would say an essential step is really to strengthen statistical capabilities for data collection, analysis, disaggregation, and dissemination. It takes better data, new data sources, as well, and I may say, and let me underline this, the inclusion of geographical dimension. I believe very much that this conference happening in Mexico is a great thing, because this institute includes the geographical dimension. And this is essential. And that's why I believe that agreements between the Commission on Statistics, the Regional Statistics Commission, and the Global Geospatial Information Management Committee should come together. And that's what we're trying to suggest. Because the essential thing is to improve dialogue among the main data producers, you, statistics, geography, and Earth observations, from academia, the private sector, intergovernmental organization. And this should be done, of course, under the national statistics offices. I mean, the big data revolution, we all believe on that, of course we do. But it has to go through the national statistics system. It cannot go on their own. We believe, of course, Twitter, Facebook can give us a lot of information, but we need to organize it in a structured way. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for the opportunity. I really value this very much, because today we are confronting tectonic changes. We are confronting climate change, the decoupling of financial economy from the real economy, an unprecedented industrial revolution, technologies like never before, artificial intelligence, big data revolution, demographic shifts, migration. And this is time for us to think together how you can help us to look at the world from a global perspective, but from a regional perspective as well. And we from CEPAL are suggesting that it's time for a global environmental push, that it's time for a global sustainable development push to really move the world forward. And we need new coalitions, of course we do. And we need to make sure that all of you have all the support you need. I know you have 3 days of hard work ahead of you with this very difficult task of classifying by degree of statistical development and the available data, the indicators framework. But this is a monumental task. We understand that. We want you to know that we understand. We appreciate your work enormously, and we want to extend to you our full support. ECLAC and all the regional commissions pledge to continue working with all of you, with the Statistical Conference of the Americas, Felix and Julio, Rolando, Enrique, because we believe that together we can really make much more. And we refuse to see our land, our region, full of natural endowments and human capabilities, condemned to remain the most unequal region of the planet. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your opening remarks, Ms. Bárcena. Our panelists will be leaving the room shortly, but we kindly request to the rest of the participants to remain seated as the activities of the third meeting of the Interagency and Expert Group on the Sustainable Development Goal Indicators will resume after a short recess.